Hello. A little over 3 years ago, I started publishing videos. Actually, it was a little before that, but this is when I made the decision to do this regularly. Now, 3 years later, the channel's finally hit another milestone. 2,000 subscribers. Yeah, so given that I got my first 1,000 in just half a year, it's been a little slow to get here, but we're here now, and this video is to celebrate that. Well, and probably to ramble a lot. This video will be about half an audience Q&A and half me talking at you about the state of the channel and just various YouTube-related things, all with a bunch of random footage in the background. So, let's get to the first question.
If you were to be giving advice to someone picking up automation who wants to look towards detailed and accurate cars that drive decently in BeamNG, what advice would you give?
Okay, that's actually a pretty hard one, given that most of the time my cars only do one of those things. I guess I'll answer the first part first. If you want to make a detailed car, know what you want in advance. I don't mean plan it out, but have an amount of detail in mind and balance that level of detail across the entire car. Otherwise you'll do what I always seem to, which is going insane with detail at the start and then burning out towards the end. Also, you're probably better off using as few reference photos for basic styling as possible so you don't accidentally copy your reference cars, but for details, absolutely. Go wild with references, you'll need them. My off-road buggy's suspension is pretty much directly stolen from a couple Beam off-roaders. As for driving decently in Beam, this one I'm not really good at, I think the biggest thing is brake tuning. You don't want to have the highest brake force possible because that just means the brakes lock up more easily and it'll even make braking harder with ABS. Brake force should be right around the tire grip line on that graph. Aside from that, just make sure your car isn't too light. I don't know the actual numbers you want to stay above, but if your car is too light, beam physics start to get a little unstable. So, it's been a weird journey for this channel. I started out uploading videos on pretty much whatever I felt like, notably including series form content, which nobody really wanted to watch, but back then of course I didn't care. It was some really low production value stuff. I was inspired mostly by Failrace and his mostly uncut, simple 30-ish minute racing game videos, but what I did not seem to realize is that unlike Alex, I do not have the commentary skills to make that interesting, made much worse by the text commentary I was doing at the time. Combine that with some really questionable editing choices, such as using dissolves for literally every single cut, and some titles and thumbnails that seem to be about as obtuse and boring as possible, and it's not much surprise that views didn't pick up very quickly. The views started picking up a bit when I started making automation videos, although don't let these numbers fool you, it wasn't that many. These view counts are because of something I'll get to pretty soon. In a lot of ways, I miss those early days. A lot of the videos I made were just things I felt like doing, but recorded. It didn't matter much to me that Double Decker Dakar had exactly 2 views for the first couple months of its existence because I had fun making the video. Now I can't just go and make a video about any old thing I want to because nobody will click on it, not to mention given how long it takes me to make videos now, it's really not a good use of my time. Anyway. My big break, if you can call it that, was this video. It was doing fairly well at first, but then all of a sudden this happened. It's thanks to this video that I once hit over 5,000 views in a single day, and to this day nearly half of my subscribers are people who subscribed after watching it. I remember thinking that this was it. I'd gone viral. In another year surely I'd be among YouTube royalty. So why do I only now have 2,000 subscribers? Well, I'll tell you, but first...
What's your best video?
This is a question I can answer 3 times, so thanks for asking. Definitely had nothing to do with me asking you to submit that question. According to the algorithm, it's definitely my realistic car video, but as you'll see later on, the algorithm and I don't really see eye to eye. That was the first answer. The second is based on my own idea of the quality of my videos. I'd say it's probably my second Mad Max car, just based on automation build quality, but my real pick for this is either BeamCana, minus the intro, which really should have been an outro, or one of my Beam update videos, which have always been the most complex, high production value things I've made. The third answer, however, is the honest one. It's this one. The commentary is very bad, the gameplay isn't great, there are a million little imperfections, but it has a sort of character none of my other videos have, possibly because I have little to no personality. The script is not great either, but there are, like, actual jokes, attempts to be funny. You're alone on the track, so you don't have to worry about accidentally committing homicide. On the other hand, if your racing style is particularly homicidal, say if you like Forza Horizon public lobbies, maybe time trials aren't for you. There's even a little musical montage. The reason I think it's my best video is that it's the most natural video I've ever done, and I've never been able to replicate that because I just don't know how to be natural on purpose. In fact, most likely the majority of the people who clicked on this video have already left because of my dry rambling. That's just the way YouTube is, I'm not complaining, but you can tell, I clearly don't have the charisma to keep people around with my personality alone. Also, because I wish they had more views, I'll also mention that my two teardown cinematic videos are admittedly distant runners-up. Personality they do not have, but man was it fun to make them. Alright, this is really the main event of the video. Want to see my channel's lifetime views graph? Yeah. Okay, so what exactly happened? Like I said, all of a sudden, the realistic car video just took off. I have never had any success predicting the whims of the algorithm, and I genuinely have no idea why this video was picked up like it was. All I know is, suddenly, my views graph skyrocketed. I really wish I had the channel monetized by then, but at that point I neither qualified nor wanted to make money anyway. I'm not sure how much money I missed out on, but given that this period makes up the vast majority of views over the entire lifetime of my channel, it sure would have been nice. In any case, tons of people all over YouTube were suddenly recommended this video, and for some reason, everyone loved this video where some guy who won't even talk makes a really badly designed rip-off BMW and makes a bunch of unrealistic decisions that the comments proceeded to point out with unending enthusiasm. But there was a problem. The guy who didn't even talk continued to not even talk in all of his videos, and come to think of it, the guy who didn't even talk really just wasn't very interesting. So, although the guy who didn't talk got a ton of views and subscribers and such, only a relatively small portion of the people who watched that video, and a few others at the time, actually stuck around. Eventually, the algorithm started to push newer, better videos, and so began the slow decline of my daily views graph again. And so, although to this day this video still rakes in more than half of my daily views, when viewed on a large scale like this, my channel's view graph appears to be right back where I started. I tried a bunch of things over the next few years to try and follow this video up, including a sequel and several failed attempts to make it a trilogy, but I've never found the same success I did almost 3 years ago. More after this break.
How long does an average project of yours take?
Oh, that's hard to say. It kinda depends what it is. An automation project I don't even want to know, but it's probably somewhere in the high double digits hours-wise. I'm not sure if that counts editing or not, and frankly I'm prone to exaggeration when asked this sort of thing directly because that's what it feels like it takes when I make automation videos. It also depends on my amount of motivation, which varies quite a lot. I love making the Beam update videos, so those only take a couple days to get done usually, despite their complexity, not to mention the algorithm punishes you if you don't get them out as soon as possible after the update. So, in general, I guess the answer is it could take anywhere from a couple days to 2 months. Okay, so I've kind of gotten to the point where I accept that whatever success I had found 3 years ago is gone, and most likely isn't coming back anytime soon. That's not to say I'm not trying to be successful. For instance, I was convinced that switching to voice commentary would give me a big boost in viewer retention. It may have done this, but it's hard to tell because I changed a lot of things around that time. I've also switched to that focus on production value I mentioned, as well as learning some new editing tricks. I even did a lazy color grade on one shot in the Beam 0.29 video because I had to turn off light rays and it muted the colors a little bit. I've started doing collaborations too, one with Filmin and a couple mini collabs with Ruben. And I'll let you in on something, one of the videos I'm working on right now involves quite a lot of interviewing. I've even been sponsored by Connect Hosting, a BeamNG server host, link and code in the description. Sometimes I think about expanding to...
Will you ever do YouTube Shorts?
I've thought about it, though they'd just be little snippets from my main videos. It's probably a good move from an algorithm perspective, I'm just held back by one thing. I don't like YouTube Shorts. To me, every change from a regular video is for the worse. I hate the vertical phone screen aspect ratio you're forced to use. I also hate that you can't skip around in the video since there's no progress bar. I hate how you have to open a pop-up just to see the description or comments. I hate how the instinct to scroll down just makes you switch to an entirely new short. I actually have a browser extension with the sole purpose of making shorts load as normal videos for those rare times I do happen to click on one. Still, I really ought to at least give it a try since it could help me get people to watch the main videos. Maybe I'll try it for this one if there's anything in this video that is interesting enough and short enough to fit in one. Here's something I'm sure will get people interested. Let's talk money. How much do I make on YouTube anyway? Sorry, I'm not going to sugarcoat this. I haven't made a cent. I seem to average around $1/3 to $1/2 per day in ad revenue, but you see, YouTube, or rather AdSense, has this pesky payment threshold of $100 that I still haven't quite hit in over 1.5 years of being monetized. And given that I've bought...
How many microphones do you own?
3 microphones for a total of, $500? A wheel and even a new PC, at least partially for YouTube reasons, I'm operating at quite a big loss for the channel. That's okay, it's my hobby, not my job, but it's honestly a little terrifying how much money I've sunk into this without ever making anything back, and it restricts me a little bit. I'll give you an example. I mentioned my video on Ride 4 being my best one. I paid $50-ish for this game entirely for the video, although I did end up continuing to play it for a little while afterwards. Ride 5, its sequel, came out recently, and I was interested in making sort of a sequel video, focusing on whether it was worth the money to buy basically the same game again. But this time I decided it was too much of a risk with my money. For one thing, I already have the previous game if I ever feel like playing a bike racing game again, and that doesn't require me to pay for a new one, now $60. For another, the reviews were very mixed. About half said the physics were way better than 4, the other half seemed to think it had the worst physics ever created. Am I willing to throw money at a wall? Clearly yes, given my current setup, but in this case, the chance of having basically no payoff, even enjoyment, was too high. I didn't know if the video would do well, I did know I wouldn't even make a fraction of my money back even if it did, and who knows if I would have continued playing it off camera.
What other games do you play?
Not many. I sometimes play a bit of Beam, but never Auto in my free time, we'll get to that later. In terms of games I don't make videos on, occasionally I'll go for a few hot laps in Assetto Corsa, and I have a couple games for the sole purpose of multiplayer with my friend sets, currently ETS2, and yes, Minecraft, which is a game I have not played in a decade and am already getting a little bored with again. I used to play games way more off-camera, but when not making a video, my other hobbies have kind of overtaken gaming. My newest guitar arrived the other day, for instance. I've also gotten bored of several of the games I used to make videos on, like RimWorld, which I dropped mid-series when switching to voice commentary, Wreckfest, and Subnautica. That third game's actually a pretty interesting case. As I believe I discussed in my original series on it, I don't share the opinion that the game is a masterpiece. In fact, I think it's flawed in a lot of ways that would take too much time to get into. It is, however, way better than its sequel, Below Zero, which is another series I barely started and then left after discovering I hated making those videos. I briefly played a bit of GTA, but really most of my off-camera gaming is BeamNG, again, Connect Hosting, link in the description, etc.
Do you plan on expanding to new games in the near future?
I really would like to, but the problem is that I never play new games anymore. Since I'm not into gaming for the sake of gaming as much as I used to be, and because games that aren't Auto or Beam don't seem to do particularly well on my channel, I don't see much chance of a third main game anytime soon. I'd love to prove myself wrong, though. I feel like I spend a lot of time, both in this video and in many others, circling around something. How do I really feel about automation? Longtime viewers will know that it's a pretty complicated relationship, and I think I've only addressed it directly in one video, the one where I quit the game, at least for a little while, although it was meant to be permanent. I can't even remember how long I've been playing, although it's longer than the 3 years you've seen me make videos on it. I do know that when I first started, although I was terrible at designing, I was enamored with the idea of being able to design my own cars, from scratch. No limitations. I was also delighted to, later on, find out that people seemed to really enjoy watching me play it when my channel was in its infancy. But over time, 3 things happened. 1. I started losing interest in cars to a degree. I've never really been a proper car guy. If you ask me what a 423 Hemi engine goes in, I have no idea. In fact, I don't even know if that's a real engine, I just made that up. I liked the idea of cars, not the details. But now it's not even that exactly. I guess they're still interesting, but I don't keep up at all. I don't think I can tell you a single car that came out this year. Or last year. 2. Sometime around when my sudden spike of views from the realistic car video was imploding, I began to sort of resent the success of automation compared to the games I actually wanted to be playing, like, I think probably RimWorld at the time. I really wanted to be a variety gaming channel, making videos about whatever game I felt like playing, and I didn't really like that the algorithm and the vast majority of my viewers thought of me as an automation channel, maybe one that happened to do other boring stuff sometimes. I'm still kind of wrestling with this idea today, and I would love to switch over to Beam being my main game, since it's much more enjoyable to play and create with, in my opinion. 3, and this is probably the most important one, I got good at automation. Well, okay, that's a terrible way to put it. What I mean is that as I realized the things the game could be used for, and 3D placement and other features like that came out, I got way more ambitious. And of course, the more ambitious I got, the more frustrated I was with my own limitations as a designer and, even more so, the game itself. Automation somehow manages to have a vast selection of bodies to start with, and yet also never has the right one. I have probably had more ideas that never got past planning than ones I started, entirely because I couldn't find a body to work with. Also, I despise how the whole styling menu controls. I can't list any specifics because I don't really remember any, but I always get a sense from all the bugs and quirks that the game is fighting me, that it is, in fact, not made for what I'm trying to do. Just because this is both true and justified does not make it any less frustrating for me. To be entirely honest, I probably spend most of my time making auto videos wishing I was doing something else, particularly while editing my near 100 hours of footage of the same repetitive thing I've been doing for 3 years now. So, I hear you asking, why do I even play automation? That's where the complicated part comes in. For one thing, I can't shake the feeling that the majority of my audience is only around for automation, not me as a person, since, as we've discussed, having a personality is not one of my strengths. But the main reason is that, despite the fact that, let's face it, I kind of hate auto, I keep feeling the compulsion to get right back in, fight another round. That's why a farewell to automation wasn't my last video on the game. Eventually, that compulsion was too strong. I just had to go back and make another car. And let me tell you, by the end of that build, I was burnt out and hated the game again, but I can't stop. I always come back. I think if there's a way for me to truly enjoy the game again, it would be a fundamental change to the way I play. I'm way too ambitious early on in the build. I kid you not, almost every single car I make starts with the following idea. Let's make this one my best. I always start with the intention of a build being bigger, better, more detailed than all of my others, and so I use tons of detail early on and burn myself out so badly in the second half of the build that I get very lazy and might even forget to add certain things. On the other hand, that ambition is the source of my compulsion to always come crawling back to the game, so I really don't know. It might be that while I'd enjoy building more if I let go of all the detail, I would never particularly feel like coming back. Basically the inverse of how it is now. Truth is, I really have no idea how I feel about automation. I'm probably never going to decide for sure whether I like the game or not, and in any case, my channel seems to be inextricably linked to it, much as I might wish it wasn't. Okay, that was a fun detour, wasn't it? I've got more of that lined up for you later about YouTube itself, but for now I have way too many questions on my list to just fit them in between rambles like I had planned to, so let's knock a few out.
Hello. You asked me to record while I am at work, so you will have to make do with the audio conditions. Does this count as a question?
Yes.
Does your inspiration come on a whim, or do you find inspiration in certain places?
On a whim. I've always been really impulsive with my ideas. One of my admittedly few strengths as a creator is that I'm fairly good at turning a random impulse into the motivation for hours and hours of work. There are exceptions, of course, but I think the best videos I've ever made are usually ones where I can progress from idea to being halfway done making the video before I ever realize how much work it's going to be. This was the case when I made my first teardown cinematic video. I really did love making that one. I guess that's getting away from the question you actually asked a bit, but yeah, I just sort of get my ideas at random. Unfortunately, there's no secret idea mine somewhere I can point you to. Don't I wish?
Do you want to run more build challenges? Assume if it happens, it'll depend on interest, time, but do you actually enjoy running them? Do you want to do more?
For those who don't know, gear here means the occasional automation contests I run on my Discord server. I do want to run more, in fact I'm considering pretty much doing one for every auto video I make, given that they come out so infrequently these days. That said, do I enjoy running them? No, and then yes again. The actual administration of the contest and such, not really. However, with especially the latest one, which I made a video on, I really enjoyed seeing what people came up with. Before I made that results video, I had mostly just scored the cars with a styling pole, thrown the results out into the ether, and forgotten about it. And back then, no, I really didn't like running contests. But it's a lot more fun for me when I'm actually interacting with and making observations about the entries for a video, so provided I can come up with contests that will result in interesting videos, yeah, I want to run more of them.
What is your dream update for BeamNG and Automation?
I'm assuming this question means what my dream update for each separate game is, not an exporter update. I'll start with Automation. I want fixture grouping already. Actually, my friend Soup once asked the devs about this, and from what I remember, they told him it wasn't possible with the current game engine. I have no idea why that might be, and I'm not a programmer, so I can't even guess. Still, in a perfect world, being able to move and scale fixtures as a group would make a lot of the really tricky detail work I do far less frustrating. Not to mention, I would love to be able to save a group of fixtures, a custom badge for instance, and use them on other cars. For Beam, although I realize this would not be a useful update for the vast majority of people, I would want an update that focuses on video production. The biggest thing in this update would be interactive replays, that is, the replay system the game already has, but with the ability to change the cars, or even spawn in a new car and drive around while recording it into the same replay. The script AI tool that is used to get multiple cars doing things at once is fine, but the AI are very bad at, say, stunt driving. That limits what I can do a lot. It would be much more helpful if I could have an exact one-to-one replay of the inputs and physics that I drove the path with for multiple cars. The cars don't even need to interact, they could just phase through each other if they got too close. I just want to be able to combine multiple human replays into one. I'd also love to see a way to tie a camera to a specific part of a car, like a door or something. Here's a shot from a video I have in progress. See how the camera moves as the door closes? I had to do that manually with the camera path tool. I'd really love an easier way to do this, or the cannonball shot from my last Beam update video, which is also a completely manual camera path, hence its jankiness after the part I cut away in the edit.
Very important question. What is your favorite kind of cheese?
Fairly sharp cheddar for sandwiches or toast, mozzarella for pasta, Asiago, or however it's pronounced, for bagels. Parmesan is nice too, but only in moderation. And you're right, this is the most important question of the video. Fellow YouTube creator Philman also had a few questions, including:
what's your favorite automation mod, not including dog tape?
Genuinely no idea. I have every single mod for this version of the game, even the ones I'm never going to use for contest purposes, so everything's compatible. But because of this, I can't remember what mod anything comes from. That said, I guess I'll just randomly pick this one for absolutely no reason at all. Philman also asked why I haven't learned Blender yet, a question echoed by several other people.
Is there a reason you solely do body molding in Automation as opposed to using something like Blender?
Have you considered moving to full BeamNG modding, or maybe adapting BeamNG mechanics to your automation cars?
There's a pretty simple thing going on here. Blender looks really boring. I know I've just talked about kind of hating playing automation, but at least there is some interest there. Blender's not fun for me, from my admittedly very limited experience, and unlike Philman, I don't think I can make it interesting for a viewer either. Switching to beam modding would be nice, especially since, as I've said, I prefer that game, but I'm really not that into modding at all, even for autocars. I just happen to find myself doing it, particularly with animated steering wheels, which I add for all of my cars because it's such a huge improvement and so easy to do.
If you could make a game of any kind with no limitations, what would it be?
Okay, full disclosure. Both of the questions Midnight asked are there because I had told her that I wished someone asked them, but I'm going to answer them anyway. I think one of my great flaws as a person is that my best ideas are all impossible. You see, the reason I even thought of this question is that I had been idly daydreaming about a game I will call Microsoft Driving Simulator. Basically, it's the newest flight simulator, which I don't own to get B-roll shots of, by the way, except with cars. In real life, I love aimlessly driving around and just seeing what I can find. I'd love to be able to do that anywhere in the world using a game. There's several problems with this, of course, not least of which is that unlike Flight Sim, this would need complex modeling and collisions for everything. You're not flying, you're driving, and on ground level everything needs to look and behave as it should. The game would be extremely difficult to make and probably have a file size measured not in gigabytes but in terabytes. It would also need a very good handling model, because ideally it would have a decent-sized car list that focuses on realistic, non-racing driving. In other words, it needs to feel like you're just driving your car in a normal situation. Racing games don't do that very well. Add in support for pretty much everything, wheel support, VR, eye tracking, motion rigs, and so on, and this game is probably an utter impossibility. It could be made possible by just designing a smaller fictional map, but that takes away the magic. I want to explore anywhere a car can go and have the knowledge that the route I'm driving actually exists. Besides, no game designer could capture the random, interesting things you might stumble upon driving around aimlessly. You just can't think of it all.
What's one feature you think all games should have?
Mod support. There are many games, automation included, that are just so much less without mods. I guess there are probably legal concerns in some cases, big movie franchises that happen to make a game for instance, but I do think there's really no negatives to having mod support. You don't have to install a mod if you don't want to, but if you do, it can bring so much more to your game. Not to mention, from the developer's perspective, it keeps people interested and active in the game. Okay, this script is getting pretty long now. This is the beginning of page 14, but I can't wrap things up without talking about YouTube itself. Long ago, I had dreams of, maybe, just maybe, making it big on YouTube. I was perfectly aware that the chances were very slim, although I'm not sure I fully understood the implication of this. In any case, the hope was there, and so was a genuine love for my newfound hobby of uploading badly made videos for all the world to see. YouTube was, in fact, pretty much all I did in my free time, which is why for a little while I was uploading nearly a video a day, maybe even more on occasion. The YouTube analytics page fed me nothing but happy news. Views fluctuated, they always do, but my channel was slowly growing. People were watching what I did. Who cared that it wasn't, 1 million, 2 million, whatever is seen as a big channel these days? 100 people is still a ton. I don't know 100 people, do you? Then the realistic car video blew up. In my face. And just like that, the passion went out. It's important that I make a distinction here. Passion and fun are not the same thing. I still enjoy making these videos, and not leading the section up to a "and that's why I'm quitting YouTube" sort of thing. It's just that I'm not making them for the love of the concept anymore, just a sort of vague enjoyment of certain parts of the production process, and yes, a perceived obligation to you, my viewers. It's taken me 2.5 years to really come to terms with this, but I think the hope is gone. The big spike in views has vanished, and it has been since late 2020. It's probably not coming back. It's properly sunk in that my chances of ever making a living, even a part-time job from YouTube, are basically non-existent. I've stopped really checking the analytics page because I now understand why people say it can be bad for your mental health. It's not the lack of progress that gets you, it's the regression. The way all the excitement dries up when the graph goes back down. If you've noticed, and you have, that my uploads have slowed down drastically, that's why. Don't get me wrong, YouTube is still an important part of my life, but it doesn't feel like it means as much anymore. It's not that I'm purposely ignoring uploading, but I get more immediate enjoyment out of, binging someone else's content, or playing guitar, or doing BeamNG with friends, or whatever, and whenever I stop to think about what this might do to my production schedule, the answer comes back. What schedule? And I go right on procrastinating. I don't really know how to express the way I feel about all of this, which is why I've used so many words to get as close as I can. My feelings as a YouTube creator are so complex and mixed that I cannot hope to really convey them to you in a way that will tell you what I mean. Point is, YouTube is no longer my potential future, even a very distant, remote possibility, or even my biggest hobby. It's just one of the many other things I sometimes do. But that's all kind of negative, and I don't really want to end this video on a bad note, because it's not how I feel anyway. Look at it this way. If I know I'm not ever going to make a living wage doing this, and I know my videos will take a while anyway, it frees me up to make every single one of my videos a passion project. Both of my current in-progress videos are like that, although they're both such massive undertakings that I have no idea when they might see the light of day. So, what's next for the channel? For a long time I've been interested in trying to compose and record my own background music. This is another of those things that might never actually be done, particularly because I have yet to successfully write a single track, but think how cool it would be to be able to say that all of the background music you're hearing is mine. Plus, it would give me an excuse for the 3 microphones, 11 guitars, 2 amps, 4 pedals, 1 violin, and a MIDI keyboard that I have accumulated over the last 5 years or so. Yes, I probably need help. I'm also interested in doing more collaborations going forward. I've discovered that, while scheduling and finding an interesting idea is difficult, I do really enjoy working with other people. If you by any chance happen to be a fellow creator of a similar size, and you think our content might be compatible, feel free to reach out on Discord. You can find me in my server, linked in the description. I also, as I mentioned earlier, would like to do more auto contests in the future so I can interact with my viewers, at least through your creations. I'm lucky enough to have gotten far enough to have 2,000 of you interested. I want to make the most of the modest platform I have while I've got it. I'm considering launching an entire series of just assorted cinematic stuff made in Beam. I'm not sure what to call it, although I'm considering the stunt reel because of the rather reckless driving it would usually involve. One of the 2 projects I have going on right now would be the first stunt reel video, if that is indeed the name I go with, and I hope it isn't, because it's a bad name. One other thing. As I said, I know now that I'm never going to be making much money off of this hobby, but given how much I've spent on this channel, I might as well try. To that end, I've already got the 1 sponsor, and I'm probably going to put a business email on my channel page to try and get more. I'm going to be reasonably careful to pick, good sponsors, if there are indeed any offers, but yeah, you might see me trying to sell you stuff in the future. Just apologies in advance, I guess. I guess I'm going corporate. If you want to support me directly, at YouTube Studio's insistence, I have opened the channel up for YouTube memberships. Basically, you just pay me money every month and get some perks that aren't really good for much. I'll announce it here in the hopes that some generous soul feels like throwing some of their money my way, but do me a favor. Don't do this unless you really do have the money to spare and want to spend it on me. Like I said, I no longer have any expectation of making money off of this, so anything I happened to get from memberships would just be a nice surprise. You can also do whatever a super thanks is if you don't want a monthly thing. This was a pretty cathartic video to make, to be honest, particularly that YouTube ramble earlier. It was nice to get that off my chest, and I'm genuinely feeling a lot more positive about YouTube after actually expressing all of that in writing, and later narration. As much as I would like to believe that there will be lots of people still watching at this point that I can have deep conversations with in the comments, etc., I know it'll just be a few of you. But to those people, if you're still watching, genuinely, thank you so much for letting me ramble for so long. You're the best kind of viewer. For now though, and I really ought to come up with a better outro at this point, thanks for watching and goodbye. My voice really hurts. I was not prepared for it. How long has this been? For a 47-minute recording session. Oh man. This will get very heavily edited, but yeah, bye.